I still remember the moment my world stopped. 3 weeks in the hospital, doctors unsure if I would survive the surgery, my body weak, but my heart strong enough to fight for life. I had promised myself that if I made it home alive, I would finally slow down, spend more time with my son, Matthew, and let him take charge of the family business. I thought my near-death experience would bring us closer. But the moment I stepped through the front door of my ranch, I realized I had walked into something darker than death itself. Matthew was standing in the hallway, his phone in hand, grinning like a man who had just won a lottery. He looked at me, surprised but not in the way a son looks at his father who just survived a life-threatening operation. His first words cut through me like a blade. "Dad, you're back early, you won't believe the deal I made." I didn't even have the strength to reply. My legs trembled as I looked around the house. Furniture missing, boxes stacked near the door, papers scattered on the counter. Something wasn't right. My silence made him nervous. He kept talking, faster now, explaining that he had sold one of the ranch properties to help the family. Then he said the number. $200,000. My breath caught in my throat. 200,000. I had worked 40 years to build an empire worth millions, and my son, my own blood, had sold a piece of it like it was nothing more than scrapland. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I just stood there, staring at him, wondering how much of me he had forgotten. The boy I raised to value honesty and hard work was now a stranger wearing my last name. But the part that hurt the most wasn't that he sold my ranch. It was that he smiled while saying it, proud, confident, certain he had done something good. He thought I was weak. He thought I wouldn't return. Maybe he even believed the rumors that I wouldn't survive the surgery. For him, this was probably the perfect time to act, when the old man was gone, and no one would ask questions. My son didn't just sell my land, he sold his soul for a quick escape, blinded by a woman's whisper and his own greed. But what Matthew didn't know was that he hadn't sold a simple ranch. He had sold something far greater, something that would soon destroy everything he thought he understood about his family, his marriage, and himself. As he stood there, waiting for my approval, I felt a strange calm rise inside me. Because I knew something he didn't, something that would change everything. I smiled, not out of forgiveness, but out of disbelief at how blind he had been. "Matthew," I said quietly, "if you only knew what you've just done." He laughed nervously, not realizing that this was the moment his entire world began to collapse. Because beneath that ranch he sold for $200,000 was a secret worth $15 million, and a lesson he would remember for the rest of his life. Section 2, the betrayal unfolds. The silence between us stretched like a tight wire ready to snap. I placed my travel bag on the floor and looked at my son, the same boy whose first steps I once guided, whose first words I proudly recorded. Now he stood in front of me, shifting his weight nervously, as if he already sensed he had done something he could never undo. I asked him calmly to repeat what he'd just said. His voice trembled slightly as he explained that he had sold one of my ranch properties because, according to him, I wasn't using it anymore. His wife, Sarah, had apparently found a buyer who was trustworthy and offered a fair deal. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that maybe he'd only leased the land, not sold it. But the documents on the counter told a different story. He pushed a folded contract toward me like a peace offering. I unfolded it slowly, reading line after line until I saw the signature, my signature, forged with frightening precision. My heart turned to stone. "Sarah helped handle the paperwork," he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. That was when I understood everything. It wasn't just greed. It was manipulation, a slow, poisonous whisper that had convinced my son he was doing the right thing. For years, I had warned him that blind trust can ruin a man faster than failure ever will. But love has its own blindness, and Sarah had mastered that game perfectly. She had seen my son's vulnerability, his fear of losing status, his impatience to be seen as successful, and she used it like a weapon. While I was lying in a hospital bed fighting for my life, they were signing away my legacy for pennies. I felt anger rising, but I refused to let it control me. Anger makes fools, patience builds kings. So I chose silence. I sat down, poured myself a glass of water, and looked at Matthew the way only a father can, with disappointment too heavy to put into words. "Dad," he said softly, "we didn't mean any harm. Sarah said it was just a small ranch. You have others. Just a small ranch." Those words echoed through my mind like thunder. That small ranch wasn't just land. It was the heart of my entire empire, the foundation of everything I had built. He didn't know that yet, and I wasn't about to tell him. Not until I knew exactly how deep this betrayal went. Instead, I asked him one simple question: how did you manage to sell property that wasn't yours? His eyes widened. He wasn't prepared for that. His hands trembled as he spoke. "Sarah said the notary confirmed everything was legal. She said you gave us permission years ago." I leaned back, every word cutting deeper into my chest. Permission? That was the moment I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan, a carefully designed trap executed by the person my son trusted most. My mind was already racing ahead. If Sarah was behind this, then Matthew was just a pawn. A foolish, blind pawn, but still my son. I could destroy him with rage, but instead, I decided on something far more powerful: patience. Because sometimes, the best revenge is not shouting, but letting the guilty talk until they hang themselves with their own words. As the evening light faded across the fields outside, I told him to sit down. "We'll talk," I said. "From the beginning." He hesitated, then obeyed, sitting opposite me at the table where we had shared countless family dinners. He didn't realize that this was no longer a conversation. It was an interrogation disguised as forgiveness. And before the night ended, every lie, every secret, and every betrayal would come to light. Because one truth was already clear: my son hadn't just lost money, he had lost my trust. And for a man like me, trust is worth far more than $15 million. Night fell heavy on the ranch that once symbolized everything good in my life. The golden fields that had always brought me peace now looked like graves for my memories. I sat across from my son at the kitchen table, the air thick with silence and guilt. His hands trembled as he clutched a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. I watched him, not with rage, but with calculation. I needed to know every detail. I needed to understand how deeply he had been drawn into this web, and more importantly, who had spun it. "Start from the beginning," I told him. "Tell me exactly what Sarah said." He hesitated, glancing toward the door like a guilty child afraid of being caught. Then, with a shaky breath, the truth began to pour out. He spoke about the day of my surgery, how Sarah had panicked when the doctors said it was risky. She told him that if I didn't make it, all our assets would be frozen, and she convinced him that selling a small, unused ranch would protect the family financially. I listened without interrupting, every word carving deeper into my patience. When he mentioned the notary's name, I recognized it immediately: a man with a reputation for bending the law if the price was right. That was my confirmation. This wasn't a simple mistake. This was organized theft dressed as love. And my son had been the perfect tool. He kept talking, explaining how Sarah had handled the paperwork, how everything looked official, how she even found a buyer who paid in cash. I let him speak until his words turned into sobs. The boy who once believed hard work could solve anything now sat before me broken by his own choices. I should have yelled, but instead I smiled. Not from joy, but because I had seen this kind of betrayal before. Business teaches you one thing early: those who cheat you always believe they've already won. And that illusion is the first step to their downfall. When he finally stopped talking, I leaned back and took a slow breath. "You said Sarah handled everything," I murmured. "That means she left traces." "Every crime does." My son looked up, confused. "Traces?" I nodded. "Emails. Messages. Transactions." A con artist's biggest flaw isn't greed, it's pride. They always leave proof because they want to feel smarter than everyone else. As he processed my words, I stood up and walked toward the office down the hall, the same room Sarah had often avoided entering. My instincts told me she had been in there more than once. I opened the door, the scent of paper and cedar wood filling the air. Everything looked untouched, too untouched. My files were arranged too perfectly, as if someone had rehearsed cleaning up. I noticed a faint layer of dust missing from the drawer where I kept old contracts. Someone had been here, recently and carefully. I opened the drawer. Empty space. Missing files. My pulse quickened, not out of panic but out of clarity. I knew now how far this went. She hadn't just stolen money, she had stolen knowledge, my life's work, my documents, my trust. And she had done it with the confidence of a woman who thought she was untouchable. I returned to the kitchen, calm but colder. My son looked up, guilt written across his face. "Dad, I didn't know," he whispered. I believed him, but believing him didn't change what was done. "Matthew," I said quietly, "you're going to help me fix this. Because the woman you married doesn't love you. She loves what you can give her. And soon she'll learn that what she took was never really hers to keep." That night, while my son slept in the next room, I sat by the window watching the moonlight stretch over the land she thought she'd stolen. I wasn't broken. I was preparing. Because in my world, every betrayal plants the seed of its own revenge. And Sarah had just planted hers. The next morning, dawn painted the sky in shades of gold, but it did nothing to soften the weight in my chest. I hadn't slept. My mind had been running all night, replaying every moment of my life that led to this point. Every sacrifice, every acre I'd built with my own hands, now gambled away by my son's blind trust. But today wasn't a day for mourning. Today was for truth. Matthew entered the kitchen looking pale, his eyes swollen from a sleepless night. He opened his mouth to apologize again, but I stopped him with a glance. I wasn't looking for apologies, I was looking for understanding. "You keep saying you didn't know what you sold," I told him quietly. "So let me tell you exactly what you threw away." I walked him to the window that overlooked the fields stretching far beyond the horizon. "Do you see that land?" I asked. "That's not just dirt and grass. Underneath it runs the lifeblood of this entire region, water." His brow furrowed, confused. 3 natural underground wells lie beneath that ranch. Those wells supply water to half the agricultural companies in this county. Without them, thousands of acres would dry up. I turned to look him in the eye. "The contracts for those wells bring in over $1 million every year. And you sold it for $200,000. He went pale, his lips trembling as if he couldn't form words. I could see realization hit him like a slow-moving storm. He whispered, "Sarah said it was just dry land." I nodded bitterly. She said that because she already knew the truth. She wasn't selling land, Matthew, she was selling power. And she knew exactly how much it was worth. He dropped to a chair, hands on his head, muttering in disbelief. "I've ruined everything." I looked at him, and for a fleeting moment, I saw not the man, but the boy I once taught to ride horses, to plant seeds, to never lie. "You made a mistake," I said, "but you're not the only one who's going to pay for it." My tone changed, colder now. "Sarah played you, and she played me. But she forgot one thing. I've built an empire by outsmarting people just like her." Matthew looked up, his eyes filled with both fear and hope. "What do you mean?" I gave him a faint smile. "I mean, she thinks she won. She thinks that ranch was the heart of my business. But what she doesn't know is that the heart beats in places no one can see. And I've spent years protecting it." For the first time since my return, I saw something flicker in his eyes, curiosity mixed with the faintest spark of redemption. I leaned closer. "Before you signed those papers, did Sarah tell you who the buyer was?" He shook his head. "She just said it was an investor from Chicago." "Then it's time we find out who that investor really is," I said. "Because the moment we do, this whole game will change." I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years, a number belonging to someone who owed me more than a favor. The moment she answered, her voice carried the confidence of someone who never lost. "Robert," she said, "I was wondering when you'd call." I smiled faintly. "Gloria, I have a situation. A woman forged my signature and sold my land. I need her name, her buyer, and her every move tracked." Gloria chuckled softly. "Sounds like you've been busy surviving while others were busy stealing. Don't worry, old friend, I'll find her." As I hung up, I turned back to Matthew. "You wanted to prove you could be a man," I said. "Now's your chance. Stand beside me and watch how a real man fights back. Not with anger, but with truth and patience. Outside, the morning sun rose higher, lighting up the ranch that everyone thought was gone. But I knew better. What Sarah had taken was only a piece of the surface. The real wealth, the kind no thief could steal, still ran deep beneath my land and inside me. What she didn't know yet was that her biggest victory had just become the start of her downfall. 2 days later, the winds over the ranch carried a different kind of silence, the kind that comes before a storm. Gloria arrived just after sunrise, her gray sedan gliding over the dusty path like it knew its purpose. She stepped out with a file in her hand and confidence in her eyes. "You were right," she said before I could even greet her. "Everything about that sale screams fraud." We sat in my office, sunlight filtering through the blinds as Gloria laid out document after document. The notary, James Morrison, has been flagged before for signing illegal transfers. Sarah's communication records show she contacted him 3 weeks before your surgery. And the buyer, Daniel Rodriguez, isn't an investor. He's a property broker known for laundering money through fake land deals. She pushed a photo across the desk, Sarah, smiling, shaking hands with Daniel outside a luxury car. "She's been planning this for months," Gloria said. "Maybe years." Matthew sat quietly in the corner, his face pale, his hands gripping the edge of his chair. He was learning, painfully, what it meant to trust the wrong person. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. "So," I said, "how do we take everything back?" Gloria smiled the way hunters do before they set the bait. "We make her confess. But not to us, to the world." She explained the plan. Sarah thought the deal was complete, that I was too weak or too naive to challenge her. What she didn't know was that the ranch she sold didn't legally exist anymore. 6 months before my surgery, Gloria and I had quietly restructured the ownership of my properties. The land was divided into 3 parts, one for crops, one for livestock, and one, the most valuable, for the water wells. The portion listed under St. Sebastian Ranch was the least valuable of the 3, worth only a fraction of what she believed. "She sold worthless pasture," Gloria said with a smirk. "She thinks she stole a diamond, but all she has is a stone." I couldn't help but let out a quiet laugh. Let's make sure she realizes that in the most painful way possible. Gloria's plan was meticulous. We would allow Sarah to believe she'd succeeded, right up until she tried to access her money. The transaction would be traced, flagged, and frozen by federal authorities. And when panic set in, she would reach out to Matthew. That was when the trap would close. "Your son will play the loyal husband," Gloria said, turning to him. "You'll act confused, heartbroken, desperate to believe her lies. Let her talk. Let her explain everything. We'll record every word." Matthew looked uncertain. "And what if she realizes it's a setup?" Gloria leaned forward. "Then she'll run. And running is as good as confessing." I placed a hand on Matthew's shoulder. "Son, this is your chance to make it right. She used you, but now you'll help stop her." He nodded slowly. "I'll do it." That night we waited. Every light in the house was off except for one in my office. The air was heavy with expectation. Gloria had her recording equipment ready. Matthew sat by his phone, staring at the screen, waiting for the name that had destroyed his life to appear. And then, as the clock struck midnight, his phone buzzed. Her name flashed on the screen. Sarah calling. Gloria's eyes met mine. "It's time," she whispered. As Matthew hesitated, I felt a chill run through the room, the kind that tells you justice is finally coming. "Answer it," I said softly. He took a deep breath and pressed the button. "Hello, Sarah." And with that single word, the trap we'd built with precision and patience began to close. The night outside was silent except for the faint hum of insects. Inside, the tension was electric, thick enough to taste. Matthew's trembling fingers held the phone to his ear as Gloria quietly activated the recorder. I watched from across the table, my heartbeat calm and steady, the way it gets before you finally pull the trigger on a plan you've built piece by piece. "Matthew," Sarah's voice came through the speaker, sweet, desperate, trembling with a hint of panic. "Thank God you answered. I've been trying to reach you for hours." Matthew swallowed hard. Sarah. What's wrong? His voice cracked perfectly, the fear in it believable even to me. She took a deep breath on the other end. It's about the money. There's a problem. I can't access it. The bank froze the account. They said there's an investigation, but they won't tell me what's going on. Gloria leaned closer and whispered, "Good. Keep her talking." Matthew played his part flawlessly. "What account, Sarah? The one from the ranch sale?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Remember I told you the buyer wanted to pay differently? It wasn't suspicious, it was for tax reasons. I opened a special account offshore, in the Cayman Islands. Everything was supposed to be legal." Gloria smiled like a wolf catching a scent. The trap was working. Matthew's voice rose in disbelief. "Offshore account? You never told me that." Sarah hesitated. "I didn't want to worry you. It was supposed to be temporary. But something's gone wrong. The bank says the money's linked to a flag transaction. Matthew, I need you to come here. Help me fix it. Please." Gloria scribbled on a notepad, "Make her confess how much." Matthew steadied his breath. "How much money are we talking about?" There was a pause long enough to make even the walls lean in. Then Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. 2 million. Matthew nearly dropped the phone. 2 million? You said it sold for 200,000. "I can explain," she blurted. "The buyer offered more after seeing the property. I didn't tell you because I wanted it to be a surprise. For us. For our future." I closed my eyes for a second, feeling the strange satisfaction of watching deceit collapse under its own weight. Gloria gave me a small nod. We had her. Matthew kept his tone sharp but measured. "Sarah, Dad says that ranch was worth more than 15 million. He says you knew it." Silence. A dangerous, heavy silence. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice had changed. Gone was the gentle charm. What replaced it was cold steel. "Your father is lying, Matthew. He's trying to turn you against me. He's always hated me." Gloria mouthed, "She's panicking. Push her further." "Then tell me the truth, Sarah," Matthew demanded. "Did you forge my father's signature?" Another silence. Then she snapped, her mask finally breaking. "You think your father's innocent? He's been manipulating us from the beginning. He knew I'd find that property. He planned this. He's always been 10 steps ahead." My lips curved into a slow smile. She had no idea how right she was. Matthew pressed harder. "Did you forge the papers, yes or no?" Her voice faltered. "You had to. It was the only way to make the sale go through before your father recovered. If I hadn't acted fast, we'd have lost the opportunity." Gloria's hand slammed down on the table, not in anger, but triumph. She mouthed, "We got her." I stood up and walked closer, my shadow stretching across the table. Matthew looked up at me, eyes wide, as I took the phone gently from his hands. For a second, Sarah didn't speak. Then I said her name softly, almost kindly, "Hello, Sarah." The line went dead quiet. "Who is this?" she asked after a beat, though she already knew. "This is Robert," I said evenly. "You remember me, don't you? The man whose land you tried to steal." Her breath hitched. You can't use this call against me. It's illegal." "Completely legal," Gloria interrupted loudly enough for her to hear. "This is a one-party consent state, and your confession has been recorded in full. Congratulations, Sarah. You've just confessed to fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to launder money." There was a sharp intake of air on the other side, panic breaking through her carefully built facade. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "You thought you could build your empire on someone else's sweat. But here's the truth. The property you sold doesn't even contain the wells you wanted. You sold worthless land, Sarah. You stole dust and left diamonds behind." For the first time, she didn't reply. I could almost hear her realizing what she'd done, how perfectly she had been outplayed. I continued, my voice calm but cutting. "You didn't just betray me, Sarah. You betrayed my son. And now, the same way you sold what wasn't yours, the law will come for what's left of you." There was a loud bang on the other end, a door slamming, and then the call disconnected. Gloria leaned back, exhaling. "That," she said, "was a confession. And now it's over. But I looked out the window at the dark horizon and shook my head. No, I said quietly. It's not over yet. It's only beginning. Because Sarah wasn't the kind of woman to surrender easily, and I wasn't the kind of man to stop until justice was complete. The sun rose gently over the hills that morning, painting the land in gold as if the earth itself was celebrating justice. Gloria arrived just after dawn, her phone still pressed to her ear. Her expression said everything before she even spoke. It's done, she said. Federal agents arrested Sarah and Daniel Rodriguez in the Cayman Islands. The accounts are frozen, and the money is secured. For a moment, I didn't speak. The words felt heavy, not because I hadn't expected them, but because even victory carries the weight of what was lost. Matthew stood behind me, silent, his eyes red from another sleepless night. I turned to face him. For weeks, he had been walking through guilt like a man wandering through fog, unable to see what lay ahead. But now, that fog was lifting. They're gone, son, I said softly. It's over. He lowered his head. Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Forgiveness isn't something you deserve, I told him. It's something you earn back, one right decision at a time. Tears filled his eyes, but this time, they weren't tears of weakness. They were the tears of a man who finally understood the price of trust. For the first time in a long time, I saw my son, not the boy who had betrayed me, but the man willing to rebuild everything he broke. Gloria stepped forward, handing me a document folder. The ranch is officially yours again. The judge annulled the sale based on fraud and forgery. And there's more. The government seized Daniel's assets. Between restitution, penalties, and damages, you're about to receive close to $20 million. Matthew's head shot up in disbelief. 20 million? I nodded slowly. Sarah tried to destroy us, but she only made us stronger. That's how life works, son. Every betrayal can become the seed of your greatest victory if you handle it with patience and truth. We stood outside together, the morning wind brushing against our faces. The land stretched before us, the same land that had tested us, broken us, and now united us again. I watched Matthew walk toward the stables where he and his brother, Peter, had once played as boys. For the first time, both my sons would work side by side, building something real, something honest. I looked up at the sky and whispered to myself, sometimes losing everything is the only way to remember what truly matters. Because this story was never just about a ranch. It was about family, forgiveness, and the power of truth. As Gloria drove away, I stood on the porch, feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin, the same sun that had witnessed my pain, my patience, and my victory. And as the wind rustled through the trees, I thought about every person who's ever been betrayed, broken, or underestimated. You see, life has a strange way of testing you when you least expect it. But if you stay calm, stay patient, and believe in your truth, even your darkest storm can become the light that guides you home. If this story touched your heart, hit like, share it with someone who needs hope, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories where karma speaks louder than revenge, and justice always finds its way. Because sometimes, the ones who lose everything are the ones who end up with more than they ever imagined.